knew something was off the night King came home smelling like coconut and sea salt. Not the kind of scent you get from a new body wash or a hotel lobby. No, this was faint, familiar, and wrong. It clung to his shirt like a ghost, and when I hugged him, it hit me like a slap. New cologne? I asked, pulling back. He blinked. What? Oh, nah, probably from the Uber driver had one of those little tree things. I nodded like I bought it. Like that made sense. Like I hadn't just spent the last 2 hours spiraling because Lindsay posted a beach selfie with a caption that said, "Solo reset. Just me and the waves." But in the reflection of her sunglasses, barely visible, but there it was him, King. His stupid gold chain and that faded Lakers cap I begged him to throw out. My name's Christine. I'm 34 and I used to think I was smart. I used to think I could trust my instincts. But when your entire family looks you in the face and tells you you're imagining things, you start to wonder if maybe you are. Babe, you good? King asked, tossing his keys onto the counter. Yeah, just tired, I said, walking past him to the kitchen. My hands were shaking, so I grabbed a wine glass to give them something to do. He followed me in, leaned against the fridge like he always did when he wanted to play casual. You're not mad I missed dinner, are you? Nope. He smiled. Cool. You know, I love how chill you've gotten lately. You used to be so uptight. I poured the wine and didn't say anything. Just nodded like a good little wife. The next morning, I called Lindsay. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice light. How was your solo reset? She laughed. So good. I needed it. Work's been insane. Where'd you go again? Santa Barbara. Just a quick thing. Spa Beach. You know, you drove. Uh-huh. Why? Just wondering. I saw a guy in the background of one of your pics. Looked like King. Dead silence. Then a laugh. What? Girl, no. Are you serious? I mean, it looked like him. Oh my god. Christine, you're being paranoid again. There it was again. I swallowed. Sorry. I just never mind. No, it's fine. I get it. After everything you've been through, it makes sense you'd be a little sensitive. I hung up a few minutes later and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the carpet. Sensitive. That's what they always said when I asked questions. Sensitive. Emotional. Dramatic. I called my mom next. Do you think it's weird Lindsay went on a trip and didn't tell anyone who she was with? She said she went alone, Mom said flatly. I know, but Christine, she cut me off. You've always had abandonment issues. You see betrayal where there is none. I bit my cheek. I just think something's going on. Well, if there is, I'm sure it's nothing serious. Don't drive yourself crazy. That night, I started a journal. Nothing poetic, just bullet points, times, dates, screenshots. I needed something solid, something that couldn't be twisted or dismissed. March 3rd, King said he was in Sacramento. Lindsay posted a pic from a rooftop bar in LA, same skyline, same night. March 10th, King's car smells like coconut. Lindsay's new lotion is coconut scented. I asked her at brunch March 15th, found a pink hair tie in King's glove compartment. I don't wear pink. I didn't tell anyone I was keeping track. Not even Shanice, my best friend. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to be sure. A week later, I was at Delilah's house for family dinner. Everyone was there. Mom, Dad, King, Lindsay, Spencer. I watched them all carefully. Watched how King and Lindsay avoided eye contact. Watched how Mom kept steering conversations away from me. Watched how Delilah kept checking her phone like she was waiting for a cue. You've been quiet? Dad said, passing me the mashed potatoes. Just tired? I replied. Still not sleeping well? Mom asked, her voice all concerned sugar. I nodded. She reached over and patted my hand. You should really talk to someone. Maybe go back on something. You were doing so well before. I smiled. You're right. King looked at me then. Really looked like he was trying to figure out if I'd taken the bait. I excused myself after dinner and went to the bathroom. Lindsay's purse was on the counter. Open. I peeked in. Lip gloss. Keys. A folded receipt from a hotel in Santa Barbara. 2 nights. 1 king bed. I snapped a photo with my phone, put it back exactly how I found it, and walked out. That night, I sent Shanice a text. Can we talk? She called me immediately. What's going on? I think King is cheating on me. There was a pause. With who? I hesitated. Lindsay. Silence. Christine, I know how it sounds. Do you have proof? Not yet. Then get it. I sat in the dark after we hung up, scrolling through Lindsay's Instagram again. I zoomed in on the beach photo. His reflection was clear now. The cap, the chain, the shape of his jaw. I saved the image and added it to the folder I labeled Truth. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't sensitive. I wasn't imagining things. They were just really good liars. I showed Lindsay the photo on my phone without saying a word. She blinked, lips parting. What is this? You tell me. She stared at the image, her sunglasses, the faint reflection of King behind her. Her face twisted. That's not him. Really? I tilted the screen. Because that looks like his Lakers hat, the one he swears is lucky. You're being insane, she snapped, stepping back like I'd slapped her. You always do this. You spiral and then drag everyone down with you. I'm asking a simple question. No, you're accusing me again. Her voice cracked. You know how hard I've worked to fix things with you, and now you're throwing this at me. Fix what? I asked, crossing my arms. You went to Santa Barbara with my husband. I didn't, she shouted, tears spilling over. You're sick, Christine. You need help. I laughed. I couldn't help it. That's rich coming from the woman who lies with tears on command. She stormed out of my apartment, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. I stood there, heart thudding, hands shaking, but not from doubt, from fury. Later that night, I met Shanice at a diner. She slid into the booth across from me, eyeing my face. You look like you haven't slept. I haven't. I handed her my phone. She scrolled through the photos, screenshots, timestamps, the hotel receipt. Damn, she muttered. Okay, this is bad. I confronted her. Let me guess, she cried and called you crazy. Bingo, she put the phone down. You need real proof, not just breadcrumbs. You need a loaf. I don't know how to get it. She sipped her coffee, then leaned in. I have a guy, ex-cop does private work now. Mostly cyber stuff, but he's good. Discreet. I raised an eyebrow. You're serious? Do I look like I'm joking? That's how I met Enzo. He showed up at my house 2 days later. Tall, broad, with a voice like gravel and eyes that didn't blink much. He wore jeans and a plain black tee like he didn't care what people thought. I liked that. You're Christine? He asked. Yeah. Shanice briefed me. You want dirt on your husband and your sister? Proof? I want proof. He nodded. You got money? Yes. Then I got time. We sat at the dining table. I handed him a folder with everything I'd collected. Photos, dates, notes. He flipped through it quickly. Smart. Most people wait until it's too late. I want to stay quiet until I'm ready. Good. I'll start with phone records, hotel surveillance, GPS data. Give me a week. He stood to leave and paused at the door. You sure you want the truth? I didn't answer. He nodded like he already knew. A week later, I was at work when the email came through. Subject line, delivery. I locked my office door before opening it. There were 6 photos. King and Lindsay checking into a hotel, holding hands, her head on his shoulder, him kissing her neck in the elevator. The timestamp, June 17th, our anniversary weekend. The weekend he told me he had a business retreat in Napa. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I forwarded the email to my personal account and deleted it from work. That night, I printed the photos and laid them out on my bed. I sat there for a long time just looking, studying their faces, the way they smiled, how comfortable they looked, how smug. The next morning, I called my mom. I want to talk, I said. Of course. Come by. I walked into her house like I wasn't holding a grenade in my purse. She made tea, sat across from me like everything was normal. I think I owe Lindsay an apology, I said softly. Her eyebrows lifted. Really? I've been paranoid and I realize now I've been projecting. She smiled. That's very big of you, Christine. I just want peace. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We all do. I smiled back. Then I went to Lindsay's apartment. She opened the door with a cautious look. What do you want to say? I'm sorry. She blinked. Why? I was wrong about the beach trip, about the photo. I let my fears get the best of me. She stepped aside slowly, letting me in. We sat on her couch. She looked at me like she was waiting for the punchline. I'm trying to be better, I said. More mature. I want to move forward. She nodded, eyes darting. I leaned in. Tell King I said the same. She flinched. I smiled. I'll see you at family dinner Sunday. When I got home, I called Enzo. Keep digging, I said. You got it. Then I called my lawyer. I'm ready to start the paperwork. Divorce? She asked. Not just that, I said. I want to make sure when this burns, it burns everything they've built on my back. She paused. Christine, are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Family dinner that Sunday was at Delilah's house. Her kitchen always smelled like garlic and wine, and her fake laugh echoed through the halls like a ringtone you couldn't turn off. I walked in holding a bottle of wine and a smile that wasn't mine. Christine, Delilah chirped, air kissing my cheek. You look amazing. So much more relaxed. I've been meditating. I lied. King was already there, sitting close to Lindsay on the couch, not touching, but close enough to make my stomach twist. He looked up at me and smiled like nothing was broken. "You want a drink?" he asked. "Sure," I said, handing him the wine. "Open this for me?" He nodded and walked to the kitchen. Lindsay followed, brushing past me without a word. I turned to Spencer, who was pretending to scroll through his phone. "Hey," he looked up, startled. "Hey, you good?" "Great." He nodded, eyes darting away. We sat down for dinner. Mom, Dad, Delilah, Spencer, King, Lindsay, and me. The table felt too small, too loud. Mom poured wine like it was holy water, smiling at me like we were best friends. So she said, "How's work?" "Busy," I replied. "Still at the firm?" Dad asked. "For now." Delilah jumped in. "Lindsay's boutique is doing great. She just got a new investor." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" Lindsay smiled, all teeth. "Yeah, someone who really believes in me." King smirked into his glass. I cut my steak slowly. "That's amazing. I hope it's someone you trust." "Of course," she said, not looking at me. I waited until dessert to drop the bait. "I've been thinking a lot lately," I said, setting down my fork. "About forgiveness." The table went still. "That's good," Mom said carefully. "I think I've been too harsh, too suspicious. I want to be better." "That's very mature of you," Dad added. King reached for my hand. "I'm proud of you." I let him take it. "Thanks." Then I looked at Lindsay. "I forgive you." She froze. "For what?" I tilted my head. "You know," Delilah cleared her throat. "Maybe we should." "No," I said. "Let's be honest. It's exhausting pretending." Lindsay laughed nervously. "Christine, I don't know what you're talking about." I leaned back. "I forgive you for sleeping with my husband." Silence. King coughed. "Okay, that's not funny." "I'm not joking." Mom stood. "Christine, enough." "No, really. It's fine," I said, smiling. "I've made peace with it." Dad looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Spencer stared at his plate. "I just want to move forward," I said. "No more secrets." King shook his head. "This is ridiculous." "You're right." I stood and raised my glass. "To family, the ones who lie to your face and smile while doing it." I clinked my glass against Lindsay's. She didn't move. Later, as we were leaving, Mom pulled me aside. "What are you doing?" "Being honest." "You're making things worse." I leaned in. "How long have you known?" She stiffened. "Excuse me." "You heard me." She looked around, then whispered. "It's complicated." "How long?" She sighed. "A few months, maybe more." I stepped back. "And you didn't tell me." "We didn't want to hurt you." I laughed. "You didn't want to deal with me. You always overreact." I nodded slowly. "Right. This is my fault, Christine." "No," I said, voice low. "You all knew, and you let me sit at that table like a fool. We thought it would be easier if you didn't know." I stared at her. "Easier for who?" She didn't answer. I smiled. "You're right. I need to be mature." I walked out and didn't look back. The next day, I met with my lawyer. "I want to file," I said. "Adultery and financial misconduct." She raised an eyebrow. "Do you have proof?" "Working on it." We went over the paperwork line by line. I signed every page with steady hands. That night, I called Enzo. "I need you to look into King's finances." "Already started," he said. "You're not going to like what I found." "Try me." He pulled money from your joint equity line, transferred it to a business account under Lindsay's name. My chest tightened. "How much?" 50 grand, maybe more." I closed my eyes. "Keep digging." "You got it." I hung up and sat in the dark. The next morning, I got another email from Enzo. Attached was a voice memo. I clicked play. Mom's voice filled the room. "We need to keep Christine compliant. She can't find out about the trust fund." I hit pause. Then I hit record on my phone and played it again. I labeled the file insurance. I wasn't just going to burn the house down. I was going to salt the earth so nothing could grow again. "Do you think they suspect anything?" Shanice asked, popping a grape into her mouth. "We were sitting in my car outside the boutique Lindsay opened 2 months ago. The one I now knew was funded with my money." "No," I said. "They think I've surrendered. That I'm finally the quiet, broken version of myself they've always wanted." She looked at me. "You're scary when you smile like that." "I'm just tired of being polite." Inside the boutique, Lindsay was laughing with a customer, flipping her hair like she hadn't stolen my husband, like she wasn't living off money siphoned from my mortgage. "You really going to go through with it?" Shanice asked. I handed her my phone. "Listen," she pressed play. My mother's voice filled the car again. "We need to keep Christine compliant. She can't find out about the trust fund." Shanice's eyes widened. "You serious?" "Dead? Damn," she muttered. "This is a whole soap opera." "No," I said. It's a crime scene. I kept up the act for 3 more weeks. Family dinners, texts to King, even a fake couples therapy appointment where I let him ramble about how hard it was to be misunderstood. "You're so strong," he said, reaching for my hand. "Most women would have left." I smiled. "I'm not most women." Meanwhile, Enzo was working overtime. He found bank transfers, forged signatures, even a shell company under King's name that funneled funds into Lindsay's boutique. "Want to press charges?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "I want to make it public first." "Messy," he warned. "Good." At the next family dinner, I brought Shanice with me. Just for support, I told them. "She's been helping me heal." Mom lit up. "That's wonderful. It's good to have neutral energy around." Shanice smiled sweetly. "I'm just here to observe." King leaned over and whispered. "You're glowing lately. Must be the peace." I whispered back. He smirked. "I told you letting go is freedom." I nodded. "And clarity is power." Later that night, Enzo sent me a spreadsheet. Every dollar King had taken, every deposit into Lindsay's boutique, every forged document. At the bottom was a note. "You've got enough for fraud, theft, and breach of fiduciary duty. Want to go nuclear?" I replied, "Yes." The next day, I booked the restaurant. High-end private dining, full staff. I told my family it was for my birthday. "I want us all together," I said. "No drama, just love." They all agreed. Of course they did. They thought I was finally broken enough to play nice. I met with the restaurant manager in person. "I need the staff to follow specific instructions," I said. "Some of them won't actually be staff." He frowned. "Excuse me." I slid a thick envelope across the table. "I'm paying for privacy and performance." He opened it, eyes widening. "Understood." I hired a videographer. Told him it was for a birthday montage. Told him where to point the camera, what to capture, when to zoom in. I brought Shanice in on the full plan. "I need you to play neutral. Smile. Nod. Be the calm one." She grinned. I was born for this. I also brought in Enzo, posing as one of the waiters. He'd be the one to serve the papers. The night before the dinner, I sat in my living room staring at the envelope with King's name on it. Divorce papers, fraud allegations, full documentation. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I just placed it in my bag and zipped it shut. The next evening, I dressed carefully. Black dress, red lipstick, simple jewelry. I wanted to look like a woman in control, not one in mourning. The restaurant was candle-lit, intimate. Everyone arrived on time. King kissed my cheek. Lindsay hugged me. Mom handed me a gift bag. "You look beautiful," she said. "Thanks," I replied. "I feel reborn." We sat, toasted, laughed. King stood to make a speech. "To Christine," he said, raising his glass. "A woman of grace, of forgiveness, of strength." Everyone clapped. Cynthia smiled at me like she'd won. I clinked my water glass and leaned toward the nearest waiter. "Enzo, we're ready," I whispered. He nodded and stepped forward. "King," he said loud enough for the room to hush. "You've been served." He handed King the envelope. King blinked. "What the hell is this divorce?" I said, standing. "And a full list of charges. Fraud, theft, misappropriation of funds." Lindsay gasped. "What?" "Sit down." I snapped. Cynthia stood. "Christine, what are you doing?" "Exposing the truth." I gestured to the videographer who pressed play on the projector. Footage rolled. Hotel security cam. King and Lindsay. Elevator. Kisses. Dates. Room service. Gasps echoed. Then came the screenshots, bank transfers, emails, the voice memo. Cynthia's voice filled the room. "We need to keep Christine compliant." She turned pale. "Turn that off." "No," I said, "we're just getting started." I looked at Delilah. "You helped cover it. You lied to my face." She stammered. "I didn't know." "You did." Then I turned to my father. "And you?" "You let it happen. You let them ruin me." He looked down. I pulled out one last envelope and slid it across the table to him. "What's this?" he asked. "Your DNA results." He opened it. Reed froze. "You're not my biological father," I said. Cynthia gasped. "Surprise," I added. "That's what happens when you lie for a living. The truth finds its way out." The room was silent. I smiled. "Happy birthday to me." The silence after I said those words stretched so long I could hear the flicker of the candles. Dad, or the man I used to call Dad, just stared at the paper in his hands like it was written in a foreign language. Cynthia's voice broke through first. "You had no right." "I had every right," I said calmly. "You lied to me my whole life." "That's not the point." "No, the point is you all sat back and let me be humiliated. You watched me unravel while you protected them." Lindsay had her hands over her face, shoulders shaking. King was flipping through the divorce papers like he could undo them with enough speed. "Is this a joke?" he muttered. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," I said. "You're being sued for fraud, adultery, and theft. You'll be lucky if you get to keep your toothbrush." He stood, voice rising. "You don't get to do this to me. You did this to yourself." Lindsay looked up, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Christine, please don't. Not now." Shanice stood quietly, sipping her wine like she was watching a play. Cynthia pointed a trembling finger at her. "And you? You helped her." Shanice raised her eyebrows. "I helped her survive." Delilah slammed her hand on the table. "This is sick. You planned this?" "Every detail," I said, "even the seating chart." Spencer finally spoke. "We should all calm down." "Spencer," I said, "you knew and you said nothing, so sit down and shut up." He sank back into his chair. The projector screen behind me flicked to the final slide: bank statements, boutique records, and a notarized document showing King had funneled $60,000 from our joint equity line into Lindsay's business account. I turned to Lindsay. "You owe me 60 grand. She shook her head, whispering. "I didn't know." He said it was a gift. "You knew. You just didn't care." King's voice cracked. "You're blowing up your whole life for what? Revenge?" "No," I said, "for truth. For closure, for me." A man in a navy suit stepped forward from the corner of the room. "King Walsh." King blinked. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm with the state's Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to ask you a few questions about the funds transferred from your wife's equity account." Cynthia gasped. "You brought the police?" "Not yet," I said. "But they're watching. And they're very interested in your trust fund, Mom." Her face drained of color. "You can't touch that," she snapped. "Actually, I can. Turns out when you use a trust to hide assets and manipulate your adult child, the law has something to say about it." Dad finally spoke. "Christine, this is going too far." I looked at him. "You're not even my father. You don't get a vote." He flinched. The man from Financial Crimes handed King a card. "We'll be in touch." He left and the room stayed frozen in place. Then Shanice cleared her throat. "Since we're all being honest, Lindsay, I bought the lease to your boutique last week." Lindsay's head jerked up. "What?" "It's mine now. Including the unpaid debts your name's attached to. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." Lindsay stood so fast her chair fell over. "You can't do this. You can't just take my life." "You took mine," I said, standing too. "You took my husband, my money, my family. And you thought I'd just roll over." Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't mean to." "Save it." King stepped toward me. "Christine, look, we can work this out. We can fix this." I laughed. "You think this is a negotiation? I made mistakes, okay? But I still love you. You don't even know what love is." He reached for my arm and I stepped back. "Touch me again and I'll add assault to the list." He froze. I turned to the room. "You all lied. You all knew. And you let me drown. No one met my eyes. You taught me silence. You taught me shame. And now I'm teaching you consequences." I walked to the door. Shanice right behind me. King called out. "You'll regret this." I paused, looked over my shoulder. "No," I said, "you will." We stepped into the hallway. The door shut behind us like a final chapter slamming closed. Outside, the air was cool and sharp. I walked to the alley behind the restaurant, leaned against the brick wall, and looked at myself in the mirror of my compact. Red lipstick still perfect, eyes clear, hands steady. I smiled. Happy birthday to me. The fallout didn't wait until morning. By the time I got home that night, my phone was blowing up. Missed calls from King, Lindsay, Mom, even Delilah, who hadn't called me in months before all this. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I poured a glass of wine, kicked off my heels, and sat on the couch while Shanice scrolled through social media. "Girl, it's already online," she said, holding up her phone. "Some blogger posted about the restaurant drama. Someone must have leaked it." I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" She shrugged. "Could have been anyone. That videographer had a long lens, and you know how fast gossip flies in this town." I sipped my wine. "Good. Let them talk." The next morning, I woke up to a headline. Local boutique owner caught in financial scandal tied to alleged affair with sister's husband. Lindsay's face was right there under harsh lighting and a crooked smile. King's name was bolded. Mine wasn't mentioned directly, but anyone who knew us could fill in the blanks. I opened my email. Enzo had sent me a new file. Subject, Trust Fund. Final nails. Inside were scanned documents showing how Mom had moved money from the trust into a private investment account, one that listed King as a silent partner. It was all under the radar, all illegal. I forwarded it to my lawyer. She replied within minutes. "This is enough to freeze the fund and open a civil suit. Are you ready?" I typed back. "Light the match." By noon, King called again. I let it ring. Then the text started. We need to talk. You're ruining everything. I'm sorry. Okay, just stop. Then one from Lindsay. Please don't do this. I didn't know about the money, I swear. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to the boutique. The windows were covered in brown paper. A sign said closed for renovation. But I knew better. Shanice had already started the foreclosure process. The lease was hers. The debt was King's. The dream was over. I stepped inside with her key just to see it one last time. Shelves half-stocked. A rack of overpriced dresses, the smell of vanilla candles trying to cover up desperation. I walked to the back office and opened the drawer Lindsay used to keep her receipts in. There were photos taped to the wall, her and King smiling, one of them on a boat, one at the beach. I pulled them down one by one. That afternoon, I got a call from Enzo. You're not going to believe this, he said. Try me. King tried to move some of the funds offshore, but he used a flagged account and it triggered an alert. Is he being investigated? Already is, and now they're watching him closely. He's got a meeting with investigators tomorrow. I smiled. Perfect. That evening, I got an unexpected knock at my door. It was King. I didn't open the door fully, just enough to see his face. He looked tired, unshaven, like the weight of everything was finally settling in. Christine, he said. Please. I didn't answer. I didn't mean for this to happen. I made mistakes, but this is too far. I stared at him. You loved me once, he said. Doesn't that count for anything? I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. You loved yourself, I said. I just got caught in the crossfire. He reached for my hand. I pulled back. You're not sorry, I added. You're scared. He didn't deny it. Lindsay's a mess, he said. She's not eating. She's crying all day. You've destroyed her. She destroyed herself. She's your sister. No, I said she was my sister. Now she's just someone I used to protect. He looked at me for a long time. You're not the same woman I married. Thank God. He turned and walked down the steps, shoulders slumped. I didn't watch him leave. The next day, Shanice and I met for lunch. She was grinning before she even sat down. Cynthia's freaking out, she said. She called me. She called you? Apparently, she thinks I can talk you down. I raised an eyebrow. And did you? I told her you were busy building your empire. I laughed. Good. She said you're evil. Shanice added. I took a bite of my sandwich. Letter. She also said Josiah moved out. I paused. Really? Yep. Apparently, he's been quiet since the DNA reveal. She's losing control. I leaned back in my chair. Took long enough. Shanice looked at me. You okay? I don't know, I said honestly. But I'm free. That night, I lit a candle in the living room. The same scent Lindsay used to burn. Vanilla and coconut. I watched the flame flicker, then blew it out. I sat in silence, letting the quiet wash over me. Then I walked to the mirror in the hallway, stared at my reflection. No more pretending, no more shrinking, just me. Finally, the boutique was officially shut down by Friday. Shanice sent me a photo. Chains on the door. A bright orange foreclosure notice slapped across the glass. The caption read, and just like that, poof. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen, then locked my phone and set it face down. An hour later, King showed up at my office. He didn't knock, just walked in like he still had the right. Christine, we need to talk. I didn't look up from my laptop. You need to leave. I'm not going anywhere until you hear me out. I stood. You have 30 seconds. He closed the door behind him, running a hand through his hair. I'm losing everything. The business, the accounts, my reputation. You should have thought about that before you stole from me. I didn't steal. You forged my signature, King. His mouth opened, then closed again. I walked around the desk and stood in front of him. You lied. You cheated. You used me. And now you're shocked. There are consequences. He looked desperate. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. That's the problem. None of you did. He stepped closer. I made a mistake, but I still love you. I laughed. You don't even know what love looks like. Christine, get out. He didn't move. So, I opened the door and said it louder. Get out. People in nearby offices turned to look. King's jaw clenched, but he walked out without another word. I shut the door behind him and locked it. That night, Lindsay called. I let it go to voicemail. Then, she texted, please just talk to me. I'm not okay. I stared at the message for a long time before finally calling Shanice. She says she's not okay. She wasn't okay when she was screwing your husband either. I know. Don't let guilt sneak in now. You warned her. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I'm not going to respond. Good. Let her sit in it. The next day, I went to Mom's house. I didn't call ahead. She opened the door in a silk robe, hair undone, eyes puffy. "Well," she said, "if it isn't the executioner." "Don't start." She stepped aside and let me in. The living room looked like a war zone. Papers everywhere, empty wine glasses, a half-eaten tray of cheese and crackers. "Josiah moved out," she said, like it was my fault. "I heard. He won't answer my calls. He says he's ashamed. He should be." She turned on me. "You always had to be the righteous one, the perfect one. You think you're better than all of us?" "No," I said. "I think I'm the only one who didn't lie." Her face twisted. "You humiliated this family." "No," I said again. "You did that when you chose to protect Lindsay instead of me. She's fragile. She's selfish. She's your sister." "Not anymore." Cynthia's voice broke. "You've ruined everything." I looked around the room. "No, I just pulled the mask off." She sat down on the couch, suddenly looking 10 years older. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. I just came to say goodbye." She looked up startled. "Goodbye? I'm done, Mom. With all of you?" "You can't mean that." "I do." I turned and walked out. She didn't follow. Later that night, Shanice and I sat on my balcony watching the city lights. "You burned it all down," she said. "How does it feel?" I thought for a second. "Like breathing after holding my breath for 10 years. She smiled. "That's poetic." "I'm not trying to be poetic. I'm just finally honest." She handed me a glass of wine to honesty. We clinked glasses. The next morning, I got a call from Enzo. King's being officially charged wire fraud, forgery, and misuse of funds. Good. He'll probably get a plea deal, but he's done. No more business accounts, no more investor access. Perfect. And Lindsay? She's broke. Boutique's gone. Credit's wrecked. I let out a breath. "Thank you, Enzo. Anytime." After I hung up, I got dressed and walked to the mirror by the front door. No makeup, no jewelry, just me. I looked myself in the eyes. "You did it," I whispered. My phone buzzed again. A new message from Lindsay. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to stop. I just wanted to feel loved." I didn't reply. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. Then I walked outside into the sunlight and didn't look back. The coffee shop was quiet, tucked into a corner of a bookstore, the kind of place where people whispered even when they didn't have to. I sat across from Shanice, a steaming mug between us, my fingers tracing the rim. She leaned forward. "You sure you want to do this?" I nodded. "It's time." She reached into her tote and pulled out a small black flash drive. "Everything's on here. Audio, documents, timelines cleaned up and ready." I took it and slipped it into my purse. "Thanks. You still going with the podcast angle?" "Yeah, first episode drops next week. Title's already scheduled." They all knew. Shanice grinned. "You're going to blow people's minds." I smiled back, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. She noticed. "You okay?" "I'm adjusting." She nodded like she understood. "That part's hard." We sat in silence for a minute. Then she said, "You know, I ran into Spencer at the grocery store." I raised an eyebrow and he pretended not to see me. Took a hard left into the frozen peas. I laughed. "Coward." "Delilah got fired by the way," she added. Apparently, her firm didn't like being associated with a scandal. "Shame," I said flatly. Shanice stirred her tea. "Your mom's been quiet, huh?" "She's embarrassed and angry, but mostly embarrassed. She'll spin it somehow. She always does." "Let her," I said. "I'm not playing anymore." We finished our drinks, hugged goodbye, and I walked out into the cool air, the city humming around me. Back at home, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The podcast site was ready. The trailer had already gained traction. People love a messy family story, especially when it's real. I clicked through the comments. Some were supportive, some skeptical, a few were cruel. I didn't care. I opened the flash drive and uploaded the first full episode. My voice filled the room through the speakers. "Hi, my name is Christine, and this is the story of how my family watched me drown and smiled while I sank." I listened for a few minutes, then closed the laptop. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door and froze. Lindsay stood there holding a letter in her hand. Her eyes were puffy, her hair pulled back into a messy bun. No makeup, no performance. "Can I come in?" she asked. I didn't move. "I'm not here to fight," she added quickly. I wrote something, that's all." She held out the envelope. I took it but didn't step aside. "I don't expect you to read it," she said. "I just needed to say it somehow." I nodded once. She turned and walked back down the steps slow and quiet. I closed the door. I didn't open the letter right away. I placed it on the counter and stared at it like it might explode. Then I picked it up, walked to the sink, and lit a match. The envelope caught quickly, curling at the edges, the paper inside blackening before I could even see the first word. I dropped it into the sink and turned on the faucet. Some truths don't need to be read. They need to burn. The next morning, I went for a walk. No phone, no music, just me and the sound of my shoes hitting pavement. I passed the boutique, still empty. The window's dusty now. A Felice sign hung crooked in the window. I kept going. At the park, I sat on a bench and watched a little girl chase a pigeon, laughing so hard she nearly fell over. Her mom called after her, smiling. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I just watched. When I got home, there was a box on my doorstep. No name, no return address. I brought it inside, opened it carefully. Inside was a photo album. Old family pictures, me and Lindsay as kids, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, a note tucked in the front page. I thought you might want to keep the good parts. It was Mom's handwriting. I closed the album without flipping through it. I put it on the shelf in the hallway, not to forget, not to forgive, just to say I survived this. Later that night, I uploaded the second episode of the podcast. This one was about gaslighting, about how people make you question your own reality until you don't trust your own name. I ended it with a simple line. Sometimes healing isn't about making peace. It's about reclaiming your voice. I turned off the lights, crawled into bed, and stared at the ceiling. No more pretending. No more begging for love that came with conditions. No more shrinking to make others comfortable. I didn't need them to understand. I didn't need them to say sorry. I just needed to be free.